Okay, so recently the movie Gladiator II came out, and I was reading up on the story of it, and it really reminded me of something that we are seeing in today's world. And it's interesting when you read about history, because history repeats itself. It tends to repeat itself generationally, but in new forms. And so in Gladiator II, it was very interesting to see how the entertainment in the Colosseum, right, was 10 times more violent, 10 times more just gruesome, brutal, mindless, right? And who was reigning at the time were two tyrants. Very interesting. And you really want to, stick to this because it happens in every generation. You have the performance catering to the audience to the point that we leave out, or well, we stretch far. We don't leave out. We can never eliminate the roots. We stretch far from our integrities in order to cater to the audience. But it really stems from who is ruling, because whatever happens from the head, trickles down into the body. And in saying that, the exploitation of the performers in the Colosseum kind of reminds me of the Attitude Era, right? And the era before that, if we're going into, the entering in of televised wrestling, which was just a natural step in the evolution of this. But at the same time, it's always good to look back and see what we could have done better for the sustainability of the performer, right? But nevertheless, what was the Attitude Era like? What did it promote and what did it multiply? Renegades. It multiplied violence. It multiplied highs and dopamine hits and emotion and provoking people's emotion in the wrong way. And this is very counter in my mind because I grew up in that era, being inspired by that era and thinking that that is what it is. But it's actually, if you look at the timeline of pro wrestling, it is the most disrespectful time of pro wrestling, of the craft. One of the highs of highs in times of the business, but ultimately of the craft. It's kind of like Gladiator II. We're exploiting it in fear of losing a job, right? We're exploiting ourselves as wrestlers and just keeping quiet outside of the few good men that did not, like Bret Hart, to cater to the audience, where we're not meant to, as pro wrestlers, cater to the audience. You understand? Even the shine, heat, comeback finish of a pro wrestling structure is being heavily dictated. It's rigid. The techniques are becoming rigid and robotic because we come from post-Attitude Era times. So everything that we perceive in the rules of how things go is very much backwards because it was under a tyrannical reign and structure. Beforehand, if you look at, before the televised times, pro wrestling, even the way we perceived things was the other way around. Even the way a veteran shakes hands with a rookie was more favored than trying to get rookies to shake hands with veterans in order to convict the rookie that that is what you should do. That is actually how, that's how you create proper etiquette, healthy etiquette in a locker room. And so when you're starting to see these things be misperceived or misdirected or changed, you got to ask yourself, is that what I want to promote, or do I want to change that in the position I'm in, right? I'm not knocking today's era, but it's really at a really interesting point because technologically we're advancing out of television and into social media, which is going to evolve the way, or it's going to determine the way pro wrestling evolves in the future. And so you want to identify where in this ecosystem of pro wrestling will I be my most, vibrant, most healthy, and most advancing self as a product. Because it's really different. Televised ways of, televised models of how we structure things, is still being run, but it's going to keep evolving. But at the same time, this little glitch of social media is you always got to look to that. Vince McMahon Sr. looked to technology and where it was at, and he adapted to it before anyone else did. Vince McMahon Jr. looked to technology and where it was at, and he adapted to it as, first to lead the scene. And he led the scene, but it was because of his understanding that you have to technologically adapt as quickly as you can and start trying to refine your approach based off of that technology. Today, we're in social media where an individual can pick up a mic and do this, right? And we do know that. But how deeply invested are we in creating a new model for people that are promotions? And also, I think that we're going to end up having independent contractors working with a bunch of guys, because you don't need promoters as heavily as you needed it in the past. If you don't care about, winning a championship title, hell, you can make your own these days. You know what I mean? And so you really got to, consider these type of thoughts, because, and how do you know the way for you? What's the path of your wrestling journey? The path of your wrestling journey is determined by what cross-pollinates to positively affect the other aspects of your life. So is my family improving because of my wrestling career? Is my relationship with the things that I care about, and is my home being taken care of and increasing in value because of my wrestling career, my obsession with this path, right? Because if those things are cross-pollinating to be good, that is the direction for you. If those things are breaking apart, it means you're still abiding by the old model, and the old model is not working for you. The old model will work for some that don't desire those type of things. But really, a lot of people compromise family, compromise their homes, compromise the personal records of your true successes for a life in the world of that model. That's the beautiful thing. It's changing because of where we are technologically. And these are just thoughts based off of what I've read. I always stand corrected in whatever I do, because that's the only way I can keep improving and refining my approach. And so, yeah, but that was really it. So when I was watching Gladiator II, that is what really stood out to me. It's like, the parallels of the end of an age, because after, you've exploited people, everything kind of resets. The Colosseum drops, symbolically speaking, and we reform to create a much more, almost like a healthier reset, feeding and nurturing and developing the next era to be what the last era neglected.